Welcome to the fourth episode of Season 3 of the 98% Life After Prison. Our show is dedicated to the vast majority of incarcerated people in North Carolina who are eventually released back into their community, often with almost no money and little support. I'm April Barber Scales.
And I'm Judy Van Wyk. We had to take a break for a bout of COVID, but we're back and excited to bring you this new episode all about women in incarceration. Today, we're going to meet a woman who has worked in corrections since she graduated from college in 1993.
Bianca Harris began her career as a correctional officer at the North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women in Raleigh. NCCIW houses the largest population of inmates in the state and includes women of all custody levels and control statuses, from death row to close custody to medium and minimum security. In 2008, Ms. Harris was promoted to deputy warden and went on to serve as warden of NCCIW from 2010 to 2014.
We caught up with her at Meredith College, where she's director of Meredith's Master Program in Criminal Justice. The people who work with women coming out of prison, they tend to be very protective, and we've been unable to talk to any women who are currently transitioning from prison. Talking to Bianca, you begin to understand why. Let's hear what she's learned about working with incarcerated women in her 20-plus years at NCCIW. Why is working at a women's prison so different?
Why is... I always answer that question by saying the difference between men and women is the answer to that question. If you do it well, then you should manage a female facility differently. Historically, that is not always viewed that way. But in my time, that is how we viewed it. We viewed it, the female facilities were managed differently. Women are relational.
So it was a different issue of control and using women's propensity for relationship to help run the prison smoothly?
Right. Understanding that the control in the female facility would be achieved in a different way. In other words, the budget items that we needed weren't weights. We did not have to spend or need to spend money in providing bars and things for exercise in that way. Yes, I needed yoga mats for the ladies. Sure, I did. I needed books. I needed things to exercise the mind. I needed things for them to be together. That's what they needed. But in a male facility, you may not want to perpetuate men gathering in groups because that's a dangerous issue. But women gathering in groups may not necessarily be viewed as dangerous, though it can be. But you also need to understand what you're seeing. Are you seeing groups gather for a dangerous purpose? Or are you seeing groups gather so that they can gossip and share their experiences? It's the same as women when they get off work. What do? They pick up the phone, they call their best friend and talk about it. So what are you seeing in that group? So you have to teach your employees what they're looking for. To say that I'm an expert working in corrections is an awesome thing. I'm an expert working in a female facility is not the same thing to say I'm an expert working in a male facility. That's not true. There's a learning curve in both. It doesn't mean I can't manage people, because I can. The issue is I also have to be smart enough to know that I need to be quiet. I need to learn no matter where I go. And oftentimes people coming from the male facility coming into the female facility did not think so. She's a tiny little thing. Certainly I can control her. No, you can't. Because a lot of women don't have to control you with strength. They can control you with a mental assault at any time. They can outsmart you. I would have people come to my office and just could not believe that they had been twisted up in this story. So it's different. We try to occupy them. If we occupy them with the choir, plays, we had a beautification program. Our yard used to look gorgeous. They would spend time to do that. They loved that. The programs that we would do, and they would get together and want to do those things. And, we would have people in the system that would sometimes just wonder, why would you spend all that time to allow them to do that? Well, if they're learning to play, they're not trying to get out. They're not trying to escape. They're not trying to attack. And sometimes people don't understand that's also a part of security. That's a part of safety. That's a part of, we are being a part of the trauma-informed community. We're helping better everyone. I'm helping keep my staff safe. I'm helping my offenders as they recover in their own story and do their time.
The number of women in prison, the rate of imprisonment for women has skyrocketed in the last 30, 40 years. Why is that?
Well, again, the conversation about incarceration in general, unfortunately, that's not a prison issue. That's a community issue. That begins, the seed of incarceration doesn't begin in prison. So that's not my question as a prison administrator. That is my question as a member of the community. We are turning away people because of their sexuality, because of their religion, because of their color of their skin. We're not providing jobs for our own kind. If you are someone who can't get a job for whatever reason, then you turn to some way to feed your family, to feed yourself. The seed of breaking the law, there's a reason. That reason is not born in prison. Mass incarceration is a mass failure of our citizenry. Why are we not taking care of each other when it comes to our communities not providing for itself? I can't answer that.
What percentage of women would you say who are incarcerated are mothers?
Oh my goodness. I'm sure plus 70+% at least.
How does that affect their incarceration? And how do you manage those relationships between mothers and children?
When incarceration brings or separates a family, that entire family unit has been exposed to trauma. And that's both sides of the coin. Those who have been left behind are experiencing trauma because of that separation, and the person coming to prison is experiencing trauma. Now I have this person who is leaving a child. She is suffering from that separation. She's suffering from trauma, whether she knows that or not, and sometimes she does not. What does that do for those of us who are charged with her care? It's a long journey because we have to wait for her to realize that she is now an offender, that she is now incarcerated, that she is now in this post suffering stage, and she has to deal with herself, her own person, and has to get to the point where is she ready for this reunification of her children. That may come immediately, that may come in a moment. Luckily at Women's Prison, we had a behavioral health, mental health staff, program staff, social work staff who came together in many of these instances to help with that. Sometimes quickly, sometimes it took a moment. And sometimes children were very small, and for them time meant nothing, and they could see her. And sometimes children had no desire. They were angry, and we had to deal with angry young people. And so we helped with that. And sometimes we dealt with young adults, and we helped with that. And we dealt with adults and mom. People tend to forget that just because you're an adult, you're still someone's child. And I've been in the parking lot with a child, 50-year-old man walking in front of his car. I'm not going in there. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's the greatest idea. And he was like, I don't want to see her. Okay, that's your right. And then we talk about it. And I've done that. And finally got him in there. And I said, maybe you can just sit and say nothing. But that's healing. To see each other and be in the same place is a healing moment for both. They didn't have to speak. They didn't have to talk. They didn't have to touch. But it's just one more step. So it's work. And I believe I've always taken that responsibility to heart. And my social workers, awesome. Women's Prison has always had a great, great brigade of social workers. And they took it seriously on visiting day, especially when we knew we had hard cases. And again, that could be children, middle-aged, teenage, adults. If they knew it was a challenge, they may be there, just standing in the wings, and we would be there for support. So your question, separation is a challenge. It's traumatic for both, and it's a journey, and it's a journey that's worth everyone's time. Because if I want peace for me as an individual, me as the warden, me as the person who manages that facility, and for my institution, for my offender, for her and the people that she is serving time with. Again, women are relational. So just as she has anxiety going to visitation, she shared that with the women that she's with. So they all got anxiety. We hope it goes well, and they're rooting for her. And so we now, 20 people, are all encouraged, and we all have a stake in it going well. People don't understand the relationship, whether it's supported in person through visitation, through letters, through phone calls. It can keep, especially women, it can keep them alive because we are relational. I don't separate myself. I am a woman. I get it.
It strikes me that North Carolina prisons are, in a way, I call them fiefdoms. The warden seems to have a lot of power. How much power to really shape things in a prison does the warden actually have?
Well, of course, the warden is ultimately responsible for that facility. So, it's interesting to use the word power. The warden has accountability. The warden has responsibility. You can equate that with power. That's absolutely true if you want to look at it in those terms. So it behooves the warden to do things that are in the best interest of running that facility well, to ensure that those offenders are taken care of and things are done in the best interest of those offenders. When you provide an atmosphere that stimulates her mind and stimulates her ingenuity and her creativity. So when you see things and you hear in female facilities, they're having a play. They're having a contest of, who can, dress up and those kind of things. Those aren't unusual. Those are things that stimulate her creativity. So, there is power within the walls to be creative, to bring in community volunteers, to bring in partners who can help because here's the thing, prisons have budgets. They need partners to help them. And sometimes that's what it takes to continue to run it well within the confines of what our budget says. With me, when I was there, I had 400 volunteers. And we enjoyed fulfilling the needs of almost anything that we wanted to do. And that was well established before me. Obviously, there was I rode on the backs of many that came before me, who did an outstanding job, creating a great foundation for what was a good foundation for what I had. But that's what it takes.
What I'm hearing from you is an emphasis on empowerment, not control.
Absolutely. The control aspect of it is to control the narrative of doing good work. That's the key. It's similar to say that my job, as I see it, was to understand the vision of what the agency wanted and the vision of what my facility needed, and to make those things work in harmony, that the offenders were not harmed, that the agency's vision was not violated, and that we sung a beautiful song together, and we worked well together. That's as I understand it. That's what we did. I did things that I believed in, and I would do what I thought was correct. And I did it in the name of my offenders, in the name of my staff. And I wanted the best for both.
So in our show, we've talked to a lot of men coming out, a lot of men talking about what it's like to be out, the challenges of coming back into the community and rebuilding their lives. What are the special challenges that women face coming back into the community?
Well, probably the biggest difference, obviously, is that most women who are coming out, as we already talked about, they have their children. And they never lost their children. And a lot of times, even though they're incarcerated, obviously they don't have them then, but the moment they step out, somebody's handing children over to them. And then they pick up, just like with probably the males that you've talked to, they tell you the biggest issue is going to be housing. Well, the biggest issue with women also is housing. Now they have housing with children. And then probably the second thing that people are telling you is a challenge of, the substance use issue and the continuity of care and medical issues and medication. Well, now you couple that with children, housing, the continuity of care and medical issues, all of that rolled into one. And so when you have children on top of all of that, and then you fight that substance use issue, if you have been battling to stay clean, the stressors of all of that. So, those are the things that women tend to run into. And also women who are trying to escape the life that got them into prison. We have been, and we meaning the system and the programming and the education that they've achieved, all of that has been telling them you can make it when you get outside with this new life. But once they get outside, things aren't as simple. So then you have this new challenge. But then you have that old way that gave them almost a way to make it. So you got that pull from yesterday. It fed me. And at the end of the day, women are going to feed their kids. We're going to survive. And sometimes the old way is the only way. And survival is a big, big obstacle that a lot of people don't count when it comes to the female offender trying to make it.
If you could change one thing about the way incarceration is done, what would that be?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest things for me is for the system needs to realize that people change. I am not the same as I was when I was 15. I'm often baffled by a person convicted with a life sentence at 15, and there's no way to review it. I'm challenged that we don't have a way to say the body changes, the brain changes, that this 15, 16, 20-year-old can grow into a completely different person at 20, 30, 40. And if people would truly look at themselves and say, at whatever age they are now, and can I be judged now from what I did at 21, and give a true answer to that, and say the same thing about crime. Do I think people should be held accountable for their crime? Absolutely. I believe that. Do I think people should be held their entire life? I do not. Will I do my job? I've always done that. But no.
Is there anything that you think is really important that I haven't asked?
Oh, well, there's so many things. Not really. Not really. I think, again, just talk about the incarcerated female is such a in-depth conversation. It involves so much. One of the big errors, in my opinion, is that managing systems, especially prison systems, one of the approaches that many systems take is a one-size-fits-all. And that is incorrect. You cannot manage male and female facilities in the same way. If I can be passionate about anything, it would be that. When you don't understand that gender makes a difference, when you don't understand that you must have respect for the fact that female offenders are different. They must be managed differently. They must have different things. They must have different approaches. They must be respected differently. If you don't understand that, you shouldn't be managing them. In my opinion, it's almost inhumane to do that. I believe a career in corrections is a privilege. It is an honor to be tasked and given the responsibility to care for God's creatures, for God's people. But it shouldn't be taken lightly. So many do. For me, it wasn't just a job. It was an honor. It is an honor. It's why I'm in reentry now. It's why I still continue to care about those who remain behind the fence. And I still continue to reach out and look out for them. So yeah, there's a lot. And I want to keep the eyes on the female offender because she is so tiny. Nobody talks about her. Everybody talks about the male, and they should. From a numbers standpoint, you have to talk about the male offender. But don't forget about her.
Bianca Harris certainly tells it like she sees it. And I like that about her. And she describes so clearly the challenges women face when they get out of prison. Being a caregiver often makes it so much more complicated than it is for men. April, you spent many years at NCCIW yourself, and you got to know Bianca Harris from the perspective of a resident. What was your experience of her like?
Miss Harris, Bianca, as she says I can call her now, was a what you see, what you get kind of person. She was fair, but she also had a job to do. As we joke when we're together, I say that you had a job to find me, and I had a job to hide from you. So that's kind of how our relationship went. But she is a good person, and she has a good heart, and that helped her and helped us deal with the situation.
And she talks a lot about working with kids and mothers. Do you remember that particularly?
Yeah, she was always very invested in the MATCH program, and MATCH stands for Mothers and Their Children. And she always tried to be present whenever we had visits and make the caregivers feel comfortable when they were bringing the children in to see their parents.
That's cool. That's cool. You know, she really took the job of looking after those women seriously.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. And it's too bad that they've lost her.
Yeah. There won't be any others like her.
That's our show for today. Join us next time for a long overdue discussion of the fines and fees that permeate every aspect of our criminal justice system, making it expensive to be charged with breaking the law. Until then, we hope you will check out other episodes of our podcast, The 98% Life After Prison.
Meanwhile, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at 98%lifeafterprison@gmail.com. Again, that's 98%lifeafterprison@gmail.com. We'll see you next time. Take care.